So far, I've done quite a handful of videos pertaining to extreme metal and certain situations relating to true crime scenarios and how these two topics intermingle to make a combination of a subject matter here. And in this video, it's going to be no different, as there is another story to discuss and is downright debatably one of the most insane stories I've ever read. This all being about the Dutch murder case, otherwise known as the Woke murder. This story mainly centers around Dutchman Joost Vastenhouw. Born March 26, 1984 in the Netherlands, at birth he was put up for adoption by his mother of Spanish descent. It's not specified as to why she did that. Regardless though, within 4 months, Joost was adopted by a Dutch couple. From that point up until the age of 11, Joost would live with both of his adopted parents until in the year of 1995, they filed for divorce. The reason for that divorce is that the adoptive father, Jan Vastenhouw, took an interest for men and came out being homosexual. After the divorce case was settled, Jan Vastenhouw ended up gaining custody of his adopted son, and they ended up living in the Dutch city Alphen aan den Rijn. Since these circumstances left Joost in quite the disarray, as one can imagine, growing up in his teenage years, he became quite reclusive to his adopted father and started wearing darker clothing, growing out his hair, and finding more fascination with alternative music, and ended up even learning how to play bass guitar. All the while, during the same time period in the year 2000, the adopted father, Jan Vastenhouw, would end up spending his free time around the Dutch gay bars. And this is where he ended up meeting his partner for a short time period, that being Long Long G. Long Long was a Chinese immigrant spending his holiday leave in the Netherlands. And when he ended up meeting Jan Vastenhouw at the gay bars, they ended up connecting really quickly, and they ended up being in a relationship between the years of 2000 to 2003. Even though the relationship only lasted for 3 years, Long Long being a Chinese immigrant having to go back to that country, Jan Vastenhouw allowed Long Long to stay at his house rent-free basically, as he didn't want a guilty conscience over his head. I'll get back to Long Long later on in this video, as there is a lot to discuss with him as this video progresses on. But getting back to the adopted son, Joost Vastenhouw, in the year 2004, he would start up a black metal band called Calslagen. It would end up being a very short-lived band with not many releases, as it was active between the years of 2004 to 2006, and they only had 2 releases, that being a demo and a split. Calslagen is considered to be an NSBM band, that being National Socialist Black Metal. And even though lyrics are not provided for any of the releases that they did, and there's no interviews you can find of Joost Vastenhouw discussing his own political beliefs, however, the evidence for why they're characterized as such is written on the wall. Their demo, called Marching a Path to Israel, the song titles on it are pretty sketchy at face value, especially the opening track. Then there's a split, Support Our POWs, European Tour 2005. The split they did a band with would be Brigade M. For those who are unaware, Brigade M was a very far-right leaning, hardcore punk, RAC, being Rock Against Communists, band that was active, I believe, between the mid-90s up until the 2010s. And what makes them quite controversial mainly comes from their vocalist, Tim Muday, who is a really outspoken person, as he's a big supporter to that of anything of like right-leaning or nationalist viewpoints. And he's gotten into trouble within the law in Europe quite a handful of times, considering the fact that when it comes to some of the countries in Europe, hate speech laws are quite regulated. That correlates with this split right here between Brigade M and Calslagen, as in the year 2005, to capitalize on this split, they would end up doing a European summer tour between the countries of the Netherlands, Hungary, Germany,
Romania, and the Czech Republic. It's just they never got to the portion within the tour to get to the Czech Republic, as once again the vocalist of Brigade M, Tim Moudet, would get into trouble once again, get arrested for hate speech. As for Joost Vostenhouw, when it comes to any of the political tags named under him, from all of the forums and accounts I could come across of people who stated that they did know of him and met him personally, is that he never really took part of any of the committees, gatherings, or protests of any of these far right-leaning ideas and parties, but more so was just kind of there, touring and making music, and that's it. And there are other accounts of people who did know of him stating that he was a really kind and caring person that never had any hostility towards any of these political types of ideas. I guess just the problem being for some people, and this is going to come up later on in this video, is that, well, he's still affiliated in some way with these ideologies if he's willing to tour and do splits with them. As for the music of Calslagen, there's really not much to discuss here, as they were only active for 2 years and they only released 2 releases. Both the demo and split, the material on it by Calslagen is the exact same. And if you want to listen to it in full, it is up here on YouTube, and I'll have a link provided in the description to it if you want to hear it. And for those who worry about listening to sketchy music, you don't have to, as it's an MP4 rip. The band's been inactive for almost 20 years, so no traction or revenue is going to go from them from listening to this, for those who worry about such things. But as for the discussion of the music itself, it's just a black metal band playing black metal, and that's really it. As the production value has all the cliches and components you're used to hearing. It's raw, lo-fi, it's harsh, it's aggressive. The drum performance and instrumentals overall, I should state, again, it's black metal, but there's kind of a bit of like a punk flavor with it, kind of showcasing, I guess, a little bit of their interest with like the whole RAC and oi punk bands that they were affiliated with. And the only other standout component about it is the vocals. Again, nothing groundbreaking or unorthodox, but has a bit of grit and power when it came to the execution. But other than that, it's just 30 minutes of this kind of like punk-tinged black metal band, and that's all that can really be stated about them. Now, as to why this band was so short-lived, all has to do with the events I'm about to be talking next that happened in October of 2006. This is the part of the story now where we get back to Joost's adopted father, Jan Vostenhouw, and his ex-boyfriend, Long, as up until the year of 2006, all 3 of them resided in the same house. However, on October 3rd, 2006, what is cited as one of the darkest and most heinous Dutch crimes ever in the country's history took place. So as the story goes from all of the articles I came across discussing this event, is that Jan Vostenhouw, the adopted father and provider to the household, went to his day job thinking it's just another everyday routine of going to your 9-to-5 job, leaving his adopted son, Joost Vostenhouw, at home with his ex-boyfriend, Long G, thinking nothing of it, as throughout the whole day it stated that Joost Vostenhouw was on his computer with his back turned to everything, and Long G would end up grabbing an axe and swinging it over the head of Joost, thus killing him. After committing murder, Long G would use that same axe to dismember and chop off all of the limbs and other body parts of Joost. From there, Long G ended up taking all of the dismembered body parts, putting them in trash bags, hiding them in his room, and ended up trying to clean up as much of the evidence as he could from all of the blood and gore that was smeared all over the walls and floors until Jan Vostenhouw came home. Once Jan was home, not seeing his son anywhere, he just thought he went out for the night and didn't think much of it, as Long G was there cleaning up the place, making everything look all nice and tidy. So for the first couple of days,
Jan didn't think much of anything. But with the days that followed, as Jan was going to work at his day job, Long G was going to work trying to cover up as much of the evidence as possible once again, as eyewitness reports state that during the following day after he committed murder, he went to a local supermarket and gathered up somewhere around 24 bottles of cooking oil to be brought back to the house. From there, Long G gathered up all of the dismembered body parts of Joost, and he either deep fried or baked them in an electric oven. From thereafter, he gathered up all of the cooked up body parts, put them in trash bags, and disposed of them in either garbage barrels, dumpsters, and canals throughout the city. From the days that proceeded on, Jan Vossenhauer increasingly became more and more worried about his son, filing out a report to the police that he believed his son went missing. Shortly after, police started investigating eyewitness reports around the neighborhood, all of which cited seeing Long G coming and going out of the house multiple times, from the time that he came from the local supermarket with over 24 bottles of cooking oil, to leaving the house with burnt marks over his hands, to coming and going out of the house multiple times with trash bags. It seemed very suspicious. Because of those reports, police only had one suspect, that of course being Long G. And when they ended up doing a search within the house where Joost Vossenhauer was murdered, they found blood samples scattered all over the place. So within a week's time of the murder, Long G ended up being arrested. From his arrest, Long was not sentenced to a conventional prison, but rather he was sentenced to the Peter Bonds Center. Funny enough, I've talked about this before when I did a video all about Stalag. But anyway, getting back on track here, the Peter Bonds Center is a mental institution for the criminally insane. Yep, turns out that Long is mentally unstable, suffering from schizophrenia and paranoia. But even then, that doesn't explain how that could drive someone to commit such a horrendous crime. And all of these questions surrounding this event wouldn't be answered until a few months later, in March of 2007, when Long finally confessed to all of his motivations for committing murder. In his confession, he stated that he was an advocate follower of the Chinese cult known as Falun Gong. This deep into the video and story, talking about Falun Gong is like opening up a whole other can of worms for a different discussion. There are videos here on YouTube all discussing it in greater detail, but to just give you a really quick rundown of it, it's a Chinese cult that was outlawed in China in 1999, but started, I believe, in the year 1992 by its leader, Li Hongzhi, if I'm not mistaken. And it started out being like this whole like meditative, find oneself peace type of stuff relating to that. But later on turned into how every other cult kind of gets into, where it's a cult leader having all of these wild things that he believes and his followers believe into it. And what's just really odd about it, that one thing I want to point out with Falun Gong is with some of the teachings of it, it's very anti-gay with how it kind of like lets people into their heaven. So it's quite odd for Long, even though he's schizophrenic and paranoid, to be an advocate follower of this cult who, just by their own practices, would probably just, shun him away from it. But again, we're coming off of the word now of someone who is mentally unstable. But the reason it's important to bring up that Long was an advocate follower for Falun Gong is that the reason for this murder he committed was, as he put it, for spiritual reasons, to help cleanse the debt from the victim's past life. As to why Long cooked, deep fried, and baked all of Joost Vossenhauer's body parts was because what he wanted to do was to cremate the body, as it was the only way to perfectly cleanse all of the evil spirits attached to Joost's body. Well, he couldn't do so as he didn't have the resources to cremate them, so according to Long, the next best outcome was to deep fry them. Long Long also confessed to where he disposed of all of the evidence, or really in this case, Joost's body parts, where there was a big search party throughout the city, and police came across somewhere around roughly a little over 40 pieces of evidence. Since the confession came from an individual who was mentally unstable, rumors started circulating as to what the true reasons were, as some believed it was for cannibalism, but there was never any signs of that from the evidence that they gathered, and Jan Vostenhauw, the adopted father, believed that it was more of a politically driven circumstance, considering the fact that his adopted son, Joost Vostenhauw, was in all those like far right leaning bands and ideologies when it came to his music, that it kind of conflicted with Long Long's beliefs, but again, there's no evidence to support that. From the years of 2007 up until 2016, Long Long G would stay within the custody of the Peter Bond Center. In the year of 2016, the Dutch courts decided to deport Long Long G back to China, which ended up happening. The only thing being, from all the reports I came across of this event, Long Long G would end up going off radar, as people put it, as supposedly since he's connected to the Falun Gong cult, it being outlawed in China all the way back in the year 1999, him entering the country in 2016, people strongly predict the fact that he was captured by Chinese officials, and for the most part, he's more than likely been deceased. As for the victim, Joost Vostenhauw, on February 19th, 2007, a memorial service for his burial would be performed, where a repress of their demo was put out in limited quantity to help commemorate his life. Other than that, there's nothing else I can add to this story, as every article I came across always concludes it with, it's one of the darkest and most heinous crimes ever committed in Dutch history. And I mean, that's not really that bold of a statement, because from every time I've reread all of these articles and made sure all of the events connect with each other, I was just always just kind of like left in disbelief that this happened, because everything about it, every little component is just insane. Like I'm at a loss for words. Typically I try to end videos on a more optimistic and positive note, but with this one, I really don't think I can, and I hate to end things on a sour take, but my God, man, this is just insane on every aspect. All I can state here is that life can be really, really, really fucking crazy when you start going down rabbit holes on the internet, and this is a perfect example of that. And that'll do it for this video, guys. Like always, links provided to everything I talked about along with some of the articles will be linked down below in the description. Really curious to know what you think of all of this. And other than that, like always, make sure you guys drink plenty of water to stay hydrated, and have a great day.